Okay, look at the calendar. It's 2026. Now look back at 1972. That is a 54-year gap. 54 years! If you were born the last time a human was in deep space, you are currently eligible for an AARP card. That is insane, right? We have iPhones, AI that can write poetry, and cars that drive themselves, but we haven't managed to send a person past low Earth orbit since the Nixon administration? Welcome to the Artemis II Special. Why it took 54 years to return to the moon. And I'm not just talking about budget cuts or politics, though. Yeah, we'll get there. I'm talking about an invisible barrier, a literal death zone of radiation that surrounds our planet that we forgot how to cross. Today, we're going to break down exactly why we stayed home and why 4 people, Reid, Victor, Christina, and Jeremy, are finally going back to break the silence. Here's the payoff, folks. By the end of this video, you're going to understand the one thing that terrified NASA engineers for 5 decades. It's not the rocket exploding. It's not the vacuum of space. It's the firewall, the Van Allen belts. We are going to look at the exact physics of how Artemis II is going to punch a hole through the most dangerous radiation field in the solar system and survive. Stick around because the science is absolutely wild. So let's rewind. December 1972, Apollo 17. Gene Cernan leaves the last boot print on the moon. He says, "We leave as we came, and God willing as we shall return." God willing apparently meant in half a century. Why? Well, the standard answer you get in school is money. And sure, the Saturn V was expensive. It was like burning a skyscraper full of cash every time you launched. But that's not the real reason. The real reason is we got bored and we got scared. President Nixon had a choice: go to Mars by 1982, yes, that was the actual plan, or build a space truck to haul satellites. He chose the truck, the space shuttle. Why? Because going to the moon was a race, and we won. Once the race was over, the politicians looked at the price tag of deep space exploration and said, let's just do laps around the block instead. For 50 years, we have been trapped in low Earth orbit. The ISS is amazing, don't get me wrong, it's a marvel. But it's essentially a very expensive camping trip in your own backyard. You can still see your house from there. You aren't out there, you're just hovering. And psychologically, that changed us. We went from a species of explorers to a species of, well, maintenance workers. We stopped looking up and started looking down. And honestly, the internet has feelings about this. I was reading the comments on our last video, and user LunarTruther99 said, "We never went back because the aliens told us to stay off their lawn. Kubrick filmed the warning message." Look, I love a good conspiracy, but the reality is actually scarier than aliens. The reality is that we simply lost the technology. We didn't lose the blueprints, we lost the infrastructure. The factories that built the Saturn V, they became shopping malls. It's like, imagine if we stopped making cars in 1972 and rode bicycles for 50 years. And then suddenly, in 2026, someone said, "Hey, build a Ferrari." You can't just turn the factory back on. You have to reinvent the wheel, the engine, and the road. That is what Artemis is. It's not a sequel to Apollo, it's a complete reboot. And reboots are hard. To break that 50-year streak, you need a monster. Enter the SLS, the Space Launch System. It's shorter than the old Saturn V, but it's punchier. When this thing lights up, it generates 8.8 million pounds of thrust. That is equivalent to roughly 160,000 Corvette engines firing at the exact same second. The acoustic energy alone, just the sound of it taking off, is enough to kill you if you're standing too close. It's not just a rocket, it's a controlled earthquake aimed at the sky. Okay, let's talk about the mission flight path. 4 humans, 10 days, 1 loop around the moon. This is a flyby, no boots on the ground yet. But the path they are taking is called a hybrid free return trajectory. That sounds like a wrestling move, but it's actually physics genius designed by people way smarter than me. Here's how it works. Once the Orion capsule fires its engine to leave Earth, gravity takes the wheel. The spacecraft is aimed so that the moon's gravity will grab it, swing it around the backside, and fling it directly back to Earth. Free return. If the engines die, if the computer crashes, if the astronauts all decide to take a nap, physics brings them home. It's the ultimate safety net. But before they go to the moon, they do something Apollo never did. They hang out in high Earth orbit for 42 hours. Basically, they do laps around Earth at a super high altitude, about 46,000 miles out. Why? To check the tires. They need to make sure the life support systems actually work before they commit to the deep, dark void. Because once you burn for the moon, there are no U-turns. And when I say life support, I mean the unglamorous stuff. For 10 days, 4 people are trapped in a space roughly the volume of 2 large minivans. There's no shower. They're eating freeze-dried shrimp cocktail. And the toilet? Let's just say the space toilet is a very complicated, very expensive vacuum cleaner located right next to where they sleep. The psychological pressure of this camping trip is almost as intense as the physical one. But the toilet isn't the scariest thing up there. That honor goes to the invisible barrier, the Van Allen radiation belts. These are 2 giant donuts of intense radiation trapped by Earth's magnetic field. For the ISS, they stay under them, safe. For Artemis, they have to punch through them. Specifically, they have to slice through the inner belt, which is chock full of high-energy protons that love to destroy things. Apollo just gunned it and spent about an hour crossing the belts. Speed was their armor. Artemis II is going to spend more time near the danger zone because of that high-orbit checkout phase. So NASA had to harden the electronics to a level we've never seen. The computers on Orion are designed to reboot themselves in milliseconds if a radiation particle flips a bit. It's like a zombie computer. You can kill it, but it just keeps coming back to life. And it's not just the computers, it's the meat bags. I mean, the astronauts. On the uncrewed Artemis I test flight, we sent 2 mannequins, Helga and Zohar. One wore a radiation vest, one didn't. Poor Helga took it for the team. The data showed the shielding works. For Artemis II, the crew will be safe, but they will see flashes of light when they close their eyes. That's cosmic rays hitting their retinas. Sleep tight. So who straps themselves to this radiation-proof Roman candle? Unlike the early Apollo days where you just needed to be a hotshot pilot with nerves of steel, the Artemis crew needs to be scientists. They've been doing intense geology training in remote deserts, learning to identify rocks that might hold the secrets of the solar system's birth. When they eventually land, they aren't just planting a flag, they're doing field work in the most hostile environment imaginable. Let's meet the crew of Artemis II. We've got Reid Wiseman, the commander. He once said he's the funniest human he knows, which, knowing astronauts, probably means awful dad jokes. Victor Glover, the pilot. He's the spiritual center of the crew, the guy who keeps everyone grounded while they're floating. Then there's Christina Koch. She holds the record for the longest single spaceflight by a woman. She's tough as nails. And finally, Jeremy Hansen, the Canadian. This is huge. For the first time in history, a non-American is leaving low Earth orbit. Jeremy grew up in rural Canada, turning his treehouse into a spaceship. Now he's writing the real thing. He is living proof that if you stare at the moon long enough, eventually you might just get a ride there. But they aren't just tourists, they are lab rats. There's an experiment on board called Organ on a Chip. Sounds tasty, right? It's actually microchips lined with living human cells, specifically bone marrow grown from the astronaut's own blood. NASA is sending these mini avatars of the crew to see how their immune systems react to deep space radiation. See, deep space accelerates aging. It messes with your T cells. It's like pressing the fast-forward button on your biological clock. By studying these chips, we aren't just learning how to keep astronauts safe for Mars, we're learning about aging, cancer, and immune diseases right here on Earth. It's the unifying lens again. Going to the moon might help cure diseases back home. And Artemis II is just the beginning. The goal isn't just to visit, it's to stay. The next step is building the Gateway, a space station that orbits the moon. Think of it as a lunar Airbnb and a gas station combined. Future missions will dock there, transfer to a lander, go down to the surface, and come back up. Artemis II is blazing the trail for that entire infrastructure. And that brings us to the overview effect. When these 4 humans come around the dark side of the moon, after 45 minutes of pure radio silence, they will see our planet rise, the blue marble. Only 24 humans have ever seen that view with their own eyes. In 2026, 4 more will join that very exclusive club. Why did it take 54 years? Maybe we weren't ready, maybe we got distracted. But the silence is over. Artemis II is the bridge. It's the proof that we can leave the cradle again. It's the practice run for Mars. And this time, we aren't just leaving footprints and flags, we're building a permanent path forward. If you want to follow that path and understand the anthropology of the future, hit that subscribe button. We've got a whole year of deep dive science coming your way. I'll see you in the comments and let me know if you would ride in a radiation-proof minivan to the moon, or if you're happy staying right here on Earth. Stay curious.